So this is the Wednesday of the first week, so we're first class. So of course also what you'll have to do is, as well as adhere to your filing procedures, carry out your activity log as well. As if it's an office environment, all this work is chargeable. So you'll be charging your clients for doing this work. So we've got project 1 planning, and following down we've got project 1, so 1P, so that's 1 for planning, thank you, and then task 1 requirements. So that's what we'll be doing a little bit later on today. It's given for you in brief here, so the tasks will be observed undertaking are on Salus, which we'll have a look at today, which is the property location browser. Locate climate zone, property location zone, wind category, energy efficiency climate zone, locating appropriate council website, locating and completing planning approval application forms, locating and completing power line notification form, establish drawing / documentation required to be submitted to council. So that's about providing that list of what council requires. We're not getting you to actually produce those drawings today, so it's not about production of the drawings, but it's establishing which drawings are required. Establish any further additional supporting documentation specific for this design. So you've got to find out from the council whether any solar panel application process is required. Exemption, whether there is.
Can the owners of the following vehicles please remove your cars as your?
No, that's cool. Okay. So I just. Oh, that's recording. Great. Yeah, no, I did pause through that. Cool. So, yeah. So, solar panel application process. So you've got to work out, do you need to have any approval for solar panels that go on, and what are the parameters? Exemption to development approval process. So is anything that's being applied for exempt from development approval? Is the house exempt from development approval? Or what are those exemptions? How to comply for non-complying. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think that's a typo, and that I'm sure that will have to be changed. Have to run that by Merrin, but it says how to comply for non-complying development. I think that means how to apply for non-complying development. So that's what I'll be assessing you as, how to apply for non-complying development. Because to ask how to comply for non-complying development, well, if you comply, well then it's no longer non-complying development. So that's a bit odd in and of itself. But then also if you that is a case-specific scenario as well, which typically will go to a development assessment commission to give you the answers on how to comply to a non-complying development. So that's something which is largely out of your hands. However, it is good to note in your report that if you identify anything for the project which is non-complying, make a note of that non-compliance and provide recommendations as to how, or recommendations as to how that doesn't meet the compliance requirements. And then also determine bushfire attack level. Locate the sequence of the submission process. So how do we go about doing that process? And that will stem from what documentation is required. Locate council timeframe for approval. So typically councils do publish somewhere on their website what time can be expected for approvals. And then submit completed application forms and a PDF or screenshot of all other aspects required. So it's for all of those other questions, I suggest it's going to be simpler to get them into some sort of table form, and because many of those questions can be answered very quickly and easily, and if you set up a bit of a table in Word or something like that, you can cut and paste these things into there, tick that off very quickly, and then have a series of appendices. And then I suggest, if you've got separate documents, print it to PDF and merge those PDF documents to create one document out of that. So you've got an hour in which to do all that, which should be really quite achievable. I don't think it should be a huge stretch, given that we'll also be going through much of this stuff today within the class. So we'll be going through that. So if you download this folder, Task 1 Project Requirements, and open that, we've got an assessor's guide and a student's guide. So you'll be opening the students. The assessor's guide doesn't look all that different. It doesn't have all the answers, just in case you were wondering.
Where did you get to that? How did you get to
Oh,
that?
sorry.
Was that in the industry and standards section?
No, I'll go back. I'll go all the way through. So we've got prepare documentation. So this is our home,
Yep.
and then we go into project number 1,
Yep.
planning. And then it's down here, project
Okay.
1 planning, task 1 requirements. Yeah, and then download folder. So our summary is up there of what you're required to do, but then under the student project requirements, it's all in the correct format. So the take say format. So to achieve satisfactory outcome, the student must complete all performance indicators correctly. Students shall be observed undertaking required activity and submit physical evidence to support their knowledge. So physical evidence or digital evidence. Students shall require access to internet or computer, so let me know if the internet's not working. Hard drive, USB to store required information, and task sheet. Appropriate writing implement. Assessor requires students' individual assessor sheet. Hard copy or electronic format. So we'll also want specifics about the property for completing this. So we'll go into project 1 procedure document. And here we have research requirements for number 174 Shepherd's Hill Road, Bellevue Heights, SA. So, and there's possibly a bit of information in there for you as well, but this is our most important thing. And then we also have information on the building. Not that is too pertinent to today's exercise. Today's exercise is about finding out what information we need to provide for this planning approval. But here we have our building. So I'm not expecting you to be producing any specific plans today for this. It's about specifying what is required. But then also, so we have all that information there. That first bit you'll be needing is that address. However, what we will also be requiring is that it says here, submit completed application forms. So you get the application forms from the relevant council and save those to your computer and then produce those. So we're not submitting these application forms to council. We're not going through the submission process, but we can get that form and fill it all out. If you happen to have a digital signature, somewhere on your storage. Drop it in there. We also have printing available if you want to print things out to put a signature on there. But how do I say it? In the spirit of saving the planet, I don't need your signatures on that document. So we don't need to go through that. It's only if you wish. So one thing I grabbed for you just earlier. So actually I'll go touch a bit on the things we covered last week. So we talked a little bit about property ownership and forms of title that we have in Australia, and we could talk about that till the cows come home, because there are many forms of ownership, many forms of interest within property and ownership structures. Some of that, I guess, does go a little bit beyond what's applicable to building designers, but be aware that you will be learning new things in this regard all the time. However, the basic thing is, it is important that the people who are contracting you for doing work are the people that own that property. You don't want to be in a situation whereby you're being contracted for doing work on a property by, let's say the child of the person who owns the property, who doesn't legally own that property but feels entitled to it. We don't want to get into scenarios like that. Beyond that, there are many other instances whereby people pretend to own properties as well. So they're been aware of, not caught up in myself, but colleagues in the place I worked at, caught up in scams whereby people would find places that were being worked on, then put in loan applications for those properties, and it requires significant mismanagement at several stages to be able to get such frauds through, and I think that the net has all been very much tightened in that regard. But people would do that to borrow money against a property they did not own.
My nan in England, she's a bit of a nutter. She actually, when she came out here when I was about 4, sold the house that she was renting. Over in England, yeah.
Yeah.
And they ended up catching her out, but she got in a bit of trouble. But yeah, she actually managed to sell the house to pay for her holiday to move here. She rented it. It wasn't even her house. It was actually a government house.
Right.
Yeah. And they managed to sell it.
So it managed to get through the conveyance.
Got through it, got the money, everything, came out here. I only found this out just recently, because the last time I saw her I was probably this big.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how she done it. So it would have been probably late 80s, early 90s. But yeah, that's what she did. She sold the house
Yeah. And that, so that straight up you go, okay, well there should be a conveyancer, that sale, who looks into the legal ownership of that title, ensures that the vendor is the legal owner, and that all interests are being discharged, that sort of thing. That's why they get paid $500 plus, well, between $500 and $1,000 for doing that simple check. But yeah, so I'm saying typically these frauds do require mismanagement, often at several levels, but be aware they happen. Mostly it's not going to catch out builders and building designers. It's more in the transaction of property, but then also still be aware, because there may be certain mechanisms of that. So So I brought in an example of certificate of title as well. So we mentioned that those forms of ownership and how that ownership is recorded. I'll shrink this down just a smidge so we can see a little bit more of it. I've blanked out the details on that. Nobody can read that, can they?
Renella.
Oh yes, we've got Renella, but
No, not
but yeah, I'm not expecting to hone in on the owner of that place by going, oh, that dude in Ranella,
I know that bloke.
I know everybody in Ranella. So this is an incredibly simple, very clean title. There's really very little information on this. I would have liked to find something that had a bunch of stuff on it, a bunch of interesting stuff, but I didn't have one this morning. All that. So we've got registered proprietor. It says who owns it. Now there are various different constructs of registered proprietors. You've got just a single registered proprietor, or you've got tenants in common, or there's also tenants in something else. Different legal ownerships. Basically, the difference between tenants in common and the tenants in. Another thing is that when one person dies, it automatically goes to the other. In different structure, when one person dies, it doesn't automatically go to the other. That's how differences may be of some importance to building designers, but not necessarily, and we can't always, be refusing work on the basis that someone might die. So, but that's our registered proprietor. That's where it shows who owns the land. Then we have what is called description of land, and so that is known as our legal description of the land. This is a fairly large piece of land, so it's a section. So it's section 303. The way our state is divided up is we have hundreds, and then we have sections. Sometimes within those sections we have both, not both, but we have deposit plans, filed plans. Since 1996 or so, 95, 96, we also had community plans. And before that, or currently, or still, we have strata plans as well, but strata plans are not quite, don't contain all the information in a plan form. They have associated documents. So we have our hundreds, so our big blocks, our sections, which are the bits carved up with that, and then we have our various different plans within those sections, and then within those deposit plans, filed plans, we'll have allotments. So lot, etc., etc., etc. So in some other, in a resident, in a metropolitan Adelaide setting, we would have probably section something or other, and then FP for filed plan, etc., etc., allotment 101. So that's a larger piece. So that's our legal description of land. So that defines how we find that piece of land. And if we were to do a search within the Land Titles Office or SALIS, which is its online portal to the Land Titles Office, we would be able to find exactly that piece of land from that description. Another really good way of finding exactly that piece of land from its description is the certificate of title. So, probably the wrong thing. That is the current certificate of title. So that's volume 5382, folio 821. That is a unique identifier for every legal or legally owned parcel of land. So every parcel of land that can either be owned freehold or leasehold will have a certificate of title. There are also, at times, you will have properties that have several certificates of title on that property as well. Like a good example of that is a farm. So you'll often have a farm made up of several certificates of title. Whether or not those separate certificates of title can be built upon individually depends on the council and what their requirements are. So one aspect that's relatively well known is within the Barossa, outside of the country town zoning, you can't build on an allotment that's less than 30 hectares. So if somebody owns a farm which is 40 hectares, if that's split up between two certificates of title, each 20 hectares each, they will not be able to build on those separate certificates of title. That will have to be held as one. And in looking, so cadastral information, that is all the information that shows those legal boundaries, all the title boundaries of all these properties. And we can have a look on the property, well, we will have a look on the property location browser later on, but it's also really interesting, well, I find it interesting to flick through and have a look at places, particularly like Kapunda. Also, everybody knows where Kapunda is, sort of north of Gawler. There, I did a bit of work around there, and in looking on property location browser, you go, I know that bit. That's what's his name's farm, and you have a look, and there's streets surveyed in there, and separate allotments, and there's complete surveyed townships that are sitting under a cultivated field. You do have, particularly in that area, these sort of things. So there are instances where you have many certificates of title under the one property. You also have it in some scenarios, and they're not always developable as separate certificates of title as well, because of council restrictions. It might be about frontages, allotment sizes, and things like that. But I've also encountered that down. It was Port Elliot, so it was within Port Elliot, just a bit back from the beach. I think just on the Main Street side of the railway line. A property there that had 2 certificates of title under the one property, and there was conjecture about whether that could be subdivided according to those 2 certificates of title and built upon. And very rarely you'll also come across scenarios whereby there are 2 allotments on the one certificate of title. That's a very rare scenario as well. And also another rare scenario you'll come across, a few of them in my area, where you have several dwellings on the one certificate of title. That's fairly rare as well, but you get that in areas, in semi-rural areas, say in the hills, where there were previously exemptions for people to be able to build houses for their relatives on their property. So they would have their house, and they go, okay, yeah, well, here's my brother, he can build a house on my block as well. And that happened a bit in certain areas, but that sort of thing is becoming rare as well. And councils definitely do not like that now, particularly in places like the Adelaide Hills. It's one dwelling per certificate of title. If there's not and it's very difficult to divide land and create separate certificates of title in places like the hills. So this defines our description of land, and that is the piece of land that certificate of title relates to, and that's its unique identifier. Often shown on the certificate of title is the parent title. So that's the certificate of title that this one came from. So, and that's a fairly old parent title. So I guess in the process of ownership and creating ownership of land within South Australia, there was a great deal of surveying which happened right at the start, and creation of some certificates of title. And if you own, if you buy a little cottage or something right in the centre of the city, you might have a certificate of title with a very low number like that. So folio, 81. So it's there were 81 folios created, and by the time this one, so that's not many at all. You might have a certificate of title which reads like that because it was originally surveyed very long ago and has not since been carved up. This piece of land that was originally surveyed and given that certificate of title, so a larger piece, and then that has subsequently been divided or modified. Further down below our description of land, we've got easements. So this property has no easements on it. I would have liked to find something with some interesting easements on it, but didn't have access to that this morning. So that will describe. Although one interesting thing about this particular property I know. It says easements nil, but what this one does have, it has what's called a statutory easement. I see you nodding with the statutory easement. Does anybody else know what a statutory easement is? So, the typical form of a statutory easement is with SA Power Networks. Now we've got our low voltage power lines that are suspended and sometimes underground, and our consumer mains. For those low voltage power lines, we will typically have an easement that's about 6 metres wide, and you can't build on that piece. SA Power Networks and also Electronet, so all the major infrastructure, all the major power infrastructure is owned and managed by a company called Electronet. All the consumer type stuff up to a certain size and voltage, I'm not sure what that cutoff is owned by SA Power Networks. So it's divided up between the two. We'll just talk about SA Power Networks in this context. They have easements for high tension power lines that are up above, that are sailing over, and the easement they have is not recorded on the certificate of title, but they have what's called a statutory easement, which enables them to dictate what can happen underneath that power line.
You have to leave access to it always.
You do. So they'll need access to it. But yes, it does not necessarily mean that you cannot build on that easement. If you have an easement on your property, you can still consult with the easement holder to determine what your rights are, or not, what your possibilities are within that easement, and get written notification of what you can do. So if an easement is a significant constraint, test it. See what you can get approved to happen on that easement, because it might be you can't pave on this easement, but if you can't do concrete on this easement, but if you do pavers that are smaller than 600 by 600 by whatever thickness, you can, etc. So it's about the access, and it's about the nature of that easement, and understanding the nature of that easement, and whether your development impacts upon the ability for them to access their services also as a result. But there are some easements, we've got them where I live, so access over other people's properties. So we've got all these, properties up valleys. You've got to have easements for access. Nobody is allowed to put a gate on there. But it's a funny thing. But those tracks, they have to stay open. Nobody can put gates on them. So you've got stipulations like this for various different easements. They are all essentially unique. But SA Power Networks can have these statutory easements, and to work out what you can do on that statutory easement, how you can encroach on it, if you can, you contact the Office of the Technical Regulator, and you specify the location where you are, and they'll be able to bring up and go, oh yes, on this parcel of land, it's that particular voltage of power line. And I'll just say this just generally, don't take these figures and apply them. You can build a house that's 5.5 metres tall to the ridge line under that particular power line, or you need to provide this particular amount of clearance. Right? So if somebody was standing on the ridge with a rake in hand, are they able to, worst case scenario, touch that power line, for example? So it's about providing that clearance. So in some scenarios where you do have these statutory easements, or any easements, you can find out what your possibilities are under them. Then we've got scheduled dealings. So are there any mortgages associated on the property? And then if you've got a certificate of title with like 5 or 6 mortgages against that certificate of title, I know it might be important information for you as a building designer. Okay, we'll need to do this, we'll have capacity to pay. And then, so this one's very, very clean. So no notations. We don't have any caveats or other interests or anything shown on there. but also associated with our certificate of title is the survey plan image. Is that large enough for everyone to see? I've shrunk it down to make it, I'll just make it that size. Bring it up. So that determines, that shows our boundaries. And typically it's sitting in that fashion on the page. North is up. Once again, that's an incredibly simple survey plan image. Sometimes, because this one is a section, that's really all there is to be shown on that. So our section here, we also have another section right next to it. So that's another large parcel of land right next to it. But at the back, we have a deposited plan and a filed plan, and another filed plan here, and deposited plan there. So allotment within this particular deposited plan, so it's not showing us which allotments are. Now the difference between a deposited plan and a filed plan, I don't know. I don't know any sort of, whether there's, I've never encountered any different legal constraints as opposed to whether it's deposit plan or file plan. I think that's more of an administration type thing within the Lands Titles Office, how they administer those things. It's a question I've never actually answered. But both file plans and deposit plans typically have a whole lot of allotments shown within that plan. So if I was to get the survey plan image for this particular property, I'd most likely see an allotment with its boundaries like that, and another allotment with its boundaries, or however many allotments are within that deposited plan. Or sometimes when we have subdivisions, like say residential subdivisions that have a lot of allotments within a large deposit plan, they won't show the whole deposit plan. They'll show the section which is pertinent to that particular allotment. But then also what is shown is typically what is shown, not always. Sometimes you order a survey plan image hoping there's stuff on there, and you pay for it and you go, no, that's a bit of a raw deal, there's some other information I'm interested in. It's on another survey plan image. That happens from time to time. Typically, the survey plan images associated have all the information you want. But other information you might want that might be included on that survey plan image are details about any easements that are associated with the property or adjacent properties. The reason we want to know information about those easements on other properties because it gives us also some idea of the nature of those easements as well. So one case in point is if we see only this allotment here and we've got an easement right across the back there, and so we see it shown on our survey plan image, we don't get that broader deposit plan image, we won't know what that easement is. Well, it will say, easement to SA Water. So we go, is it a water supply line going across there? Is it for drainage? Is it for sewerage? It could be one of those two things. We don't really know. But then, if we get that broader plan and we see that easement going across several properties and then ducking up, and we look at the contours and go, okay, that's all on the low side of all of these places. We go, okay, easement for drainage or sewerage, and we can find out, or we get an idea. Or very common one is where we'll have a little bit of an easement here and then some other bits, and then we'll see a little square easement that's about 3 metres by 3 metres, which will be some sort of communications substation. You go, okay, well that's what that easement's for. So it's for underground services. So we can get a bit of an idea about those easements by looking at the larger plan in general. This one doesn't have it, but what it does have is, and what they will all have on their survey plan image, is accurate dimensions of the property. Now, we're very lucky in this regard. I say lucky. This is predominantly the way things are now, shown in metres and in hectares. That has not always been the way. So when I started working as a valuer, or when I worked for the state government, a lot of stuff was in yards and roods and perches, and yards and chains, roods and perches, and you have to make that conversion into meters. So you're going, okay, it's that many, that many chains and yards, and then make that conversion. Most of it has all been converted now. So there's been people working within the Lands Titles Office to update all these plans, make all those changes. So typically that's what you're going to find. Sometimes you might be unlucky and you're going to have to work it all out. But all those details, that's fantastic stuff for importing that straight on in CAD or Revit. So any drawing program, because what we can do is we can get this survey plan image, import it as a raster image or as a PDF or some form of underlay, and then draw a line starting from there to there, for example, so you pick the longest dimension, and then scale that picture up until it's represented as 452.02 metres within inside your CAD drawing. Therefore, in that way, you've got your allotment accurately drawn already there for you, and then you can follow this around, or you also get all the information for, okay, we're 452, 89 degrees, 56 seconds, etc. Do that, but all the information is there for you to be able to accurately reproduce that plan in CAD drawing. Also, while we've got this, we've got a scale bar down there as well. But I think the best scale bar is always your longest side. There, it's when you've got a scanned image, it's your most accurate. While we're talking about property boundaries, it is also very important to get boundary surveys done for property as well. We can't always assume that fence lines follow these exactly. I think probably in the majority of cases they do, particularly in recent subdivisions, but you can't take it can't and should not take it as given. Sometimes there are gross errors that carry through. Other times there are people that go, oh well, I want to get a little bit more and I'll build my thing here. Or there are agreements that have been made by neighbours, eons ago to work for them, to go, all right, yeah, well I don't really need that bit, but if you do that, and then I'll give you $1 for pairs every year or something, like whatever their agreement is. We get fence lines or garages and whatnot not sitting correctly on boundaries. I guess the worst offenders for that sort of scenario would be places like Port Adelaide, around there, sort of older areas, where people were building garages slightly encroaching onto other people's property.
Anybody building a house through World Concept?
What's that?
I said anybody building a house through World Concept?
Right.
They're terrible.
Yes.
To work with them a couple of times. One of them, they put a meter box in the middle of a driveway. So just bang, right in the middle of the driveway. So we had to cut it, concrete around it, dig it in, put a grid over the top of it. And then on my mother-in-law's house, they put the main fence a metre too close to their house. So they lost a metre all the way along square that their neighbours gained. They didn't realise that till they sold the house recently.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
The actual long side fence was a metre too close to their, inside their boundary.
Mm.
So
Wow.
the neighbours built on that?
So the neighbours have got an extra, or whatever, it was a 900 square metre block, so whatever a metre is all the way along, they probably end up with quite a lot of extra land.
Yeah, probably another 30 square metres
Yeah.
or something like that. Yeah.
So if you've got 970 squares and you can get an extra 30 squares to get up to 1,000, you sell it for a lot more, won't you?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Well, but what always remains is the legal description and the survey. So okay, like I said, yes, it matters significantly what the builder does, right? I know that builder. Yeah. Well, not personally, no,
Yeah.
not personally, but you know.
They're rough as guts.
Yeah.
They're always hoping.
And you know, and if a builder goes like, what's worse typically is if a builder encroaches upon another allotment, because the rectification of that scenario is very expensive. Yes, it's yes, that is also a tragic scenario where somebody where they've built the house too far away from the allotment boundary and they've lost space. But if they're not encroaching upon anybody, then that's a bit simpler to rectify. And
Yeah, that's right.
and the neighbours can't claim that land.
No.
It's set out here. It's set out legally. That is where the actual boundary is. But it's when you go encroaching upon other people's property is an issue. And God forbid anybody does it. It's a terrible thing to do, but it happens. People grab survey pegs and move them as well. It is illegal to do so.
It's really weird stuff too.
But it's horrendous. Because getting a boundary survey done is not cheap, and what is left behind are survey pegs. So essentially, they represent a great deal of value put in. But be aware that can happen. Some people can do the dodgy on that as well, and that's incredibly unfortunate. But for all these reasons, it is important to get a boundary survey done to determine exactly what you're dealing with where.
That little corner there, on our block.
Yeah.
This is the neighbour's concrete driveway.
Right. So it's
Yeah.
an encroachment onto your.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, it makes no sense. It's 2 metres that way and about 2 metres that way, so it's just a weird little triangle. It's like there's no
Want my
water
triangle
there.
back.
It's like it doesn't make any sense why that's on the land title plan.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah. And you do get well, yes, but okay, that. Sorry for those watching. Actually, I'll just pause that. Yeah, great, thanks. Yeah. So we've got our land titles office at 101 Grenfell Street. Now that titles are in electronic format and can be ordered online, there is becoming less and less need to go into the land titles office. And I'll show you their portal soon for accessing that. And there are many sort of land title products that you can purchase online from that. So it used to be when I was studying, you couldn't order those things online, and you had to go into the land titles office to look at the physical titles. You weren't allowed to bring a pen with you, only pencil, one of these bizarre things, because you're not allowed to go drawing on titles, all that sort of stuff. So that has changed significantly in a very short amount of time. So a lot of property information has changed significantly within a very short amount of time. All this stuff has been made far simpler and far easier to access. So that's our copy of the title. Now, our portal to the Lands Titles Office is known as sess3, so South Australian Integrated Land Information System. Have a Google sess3. Oh, you guys got it happening already. Yep. So is everybody familiar with this already?
No, I just
No.
said it.
Yeah. So within sess3, we can become an account customer, and so we can have our billing set up with them, so that we just go purchasing things, and then they'll send us a periodic bill, and that gives us access to quite a lot of things quickly and easily. But if we don't have that, we can also access as a guest user as well. I know on the old property assist that preceded this, you could also be an individual and purchase things. With these, I'm pretty sure that would still be the same. I haven't explored that, but should be able to. So up here, sales video tutorial. Watch that if you wish. In fact, yeah. Well, I will show that. We'll show that within the class today because it's not a very long
Welcome to the South Australian,
video.
referred to as sess. Sess offers access to land and property information online at www.sales.sa.gov.au. Sales is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and has 2 entry points. Members of the public can access Sales by clicking on the Access as a Guest User link. The Guest User homepage provides helpful information about some of the common searches in Sales, including how to purchase an authorised copy of your certificate of title and how to conduct historical searching. Guest users will be directed to a secure online payment screen to make their purchases via credit card. Visa and MasterCard are accepted. Organisations that have registered as an account customer can log into Sales to access an extensive range of searches and products. Account customers pay for their purchases via a monthly account invoice. Once logged into Sales, account customers are directed to a home page which serves as a hub of information, providing links to regularly accessed applications, web pages, and lands titles office guidelines. Sales is menu-driven, with menu options displayed horizontally across the screen. Account customers are able to manage their account through additional menu options. Both account customers and guest users can search for products through 4 consolidated menu options. These include the Land Search, which offers a range of land information products. For example, your Register Search, Historical Search, and Check Search. The Image Search is where users would access image products, for example, plan images, dealing images, and scan title images. The Dealing Search offers a range of dealing-specific searches.
Pause that there. So they had plan images and title images. So that's a new thing which has been added. It used to be that you would just be able to search for the deposited or for that particular plan, for that particular survey plan image. But now you can get both your title image or your plan image. I haven't done that yet, but I assume they would provide the title image much cheaper than the whole survey plan image.
For example, dealing details and the location request. The final general search menu is where users can order a property interest report or Form 1 template, as well as SA water products and other miscellaneous items. When searching property information in Sales, in most instances you can search using the property address, title reference, plan and parcel reference, or the valuation number. Pete?
Now, I'll give you a quick heads up about what the valuation number is. And some of you may already know valuation numbers and how that all works. It is a 10-digit number, I think 9 or 10-digit number. Typically, every single certificate of title has its own valuation number, but not always. So I gave that example earlier where you have a farm that has several certificates of title within that farm. That farm will typically have the one valuation number for that farm with several certificates of title lodged underneath it. But you also get individuals within a residential setting doing that as well, where they have 2 certificates of title, so 2 allotments that might face a street on either end, and rather than paying minimum rates on both properties, they will get their valuation numbers amalgamated, so they pay minimum rates or rates on that property as a whole. So beware of that as well. But the valuation number is also a very good way of finding properties. If you don't have the certificate of title, and typically with addresses, if you don't have the spelling and spacing and things correctly, then it can get very difficult. But if you have a valuation number, that's a very easy way to find those particular properties specifically. And that valuation number is the same number that is on your council rates. So you get your council rates.
Is that the VG number?
See, yes. So
Yeah, okay.
so VG number. So VG, that stands for Valuer General, and that has just been privatised now as well. So I'm not sure whether it's still called Valuer General or not. I'm not sure about the new structures with that and what that's all called, and how accessible all that information is going to be in the future. But up until recently, yes, it was called the Valuer General's Office, which was part of administrative and information services. The Valuer General's Office determined the site and capital value of all parcels or all rateable parcels of land within the state. Now that, and we might get to see, actually no, we probably won't get to see some site and capital values within this class today. But has everybody?
Yeah, you can
probably
get them up.
Yeah,
I've got them there for
you've got them.
an example from.
All right. Well, I'll just quickly pause the recording.
Right there.
Come around, have a look at Ryan's screen there. So we'll keep going through that. So that's the valuation
have
number.
been applied across the Sailor's product range, mitigating the amount of navigation required by users. Sailors offers intuitive address searching functionality, with mandatory fields denoted with an asterisk. The asterisk symbol can also be entered as a wildcard for searching in Sailors. You can enter the wildcard or asterisk to replace or represent one or more characters when you are unsure of spelling or wish to return a wider range of results.
So Sailors, that's
Dash
Salisbury,
can
I
be
would
used to
assume.
search
Yeah.
for a number range. And fields that are not mandatory can be left blank to return wider search results. In all cases, Sailors returns the nearest matches to your entered search criteria. Users can at this stage select their desired property. All Sailors products are delivered in real time to the user's screen. Users have the ability to save and print the PDF version of their product by clicking Download as PDF at the top right-hand side of the results screen. Users are encouraged to print from the PDF version, as these have been formatted and designed for this purpose. Hyperlinks are indicated in products as blue underlined text, which when clicked provide access to further information relating to the item searched. Account customers have a 72-hour reorder period, whereby all users linked to the account have unlimited access to the purchased product for a further 72-hour period. The reorder period applies for any chargeable product, with the exception of SA Water products. There are a number of ways of seeking additional help when using Sailors. Sailors Online Help is available through the question mark icon in the top right-hand corner of every screen. The Online Help opens as a separate window, which can remain open as a reference as you navigate through Sailors. Field level help can also be found throughout Sailors and is notated with blue information icons. Hover your cursor over these icons to access additional hints and tips specific to that field. A number of additional fact sheets and online video tutorials have been developed to assist Sailors users. These can be accessed through the Online Help Support Information page or through www.sailors.com. ssa.gov.au/land services. If you require further assistance, please contact the Land Services Customer Support Team on 08 8226 3983 or via email at lscustomersupport@sa.gov.
That's, you don't mind me cutting it short, but it's all, yeah. It's all there. So, I'll actually go back, there we go. So back in here, also just, yeah, so we're recording, that's great. Also wanted to just point out, so I mentioned objecting to valuations before, so you can do it through sales now. So I don't know about about that structure of ownership and whatnot, but it's through this here that you can link to the valuer general to object to a valuation. What we are going to look at now, before we go doing any property searches on Salus, is we're going to have a look at something called Property Location Browser. So everybody has that open on their screens, and you can click on the hyperlink. Now, on Monday, we had a look at SA Map Viewer. Property Location Browser is the precursor to SA Map Viewer, but they're slightly different in that SA Map Viewer is far more user-friendly, and it shows a lot of this stuff in an easy to follow graphical sense, and yeah, I much prefer using it, but Property Location Browser has its benefits as well, so it's good to understand why we would use both. So the same as in SA Map Viewer, we can put in an address here to search for. So let's have a look for our subject property, 174 Shepherd's Hill Road. Actually, wind that back. If I go, we won't search for that property, because if I take you through this, and that's really leading. But yeah, excuse me. First time I've taught the subject, got to be aware of these things. Let's search for the property number 90 Harrow Road in College Park. So we've found that property number 90 Harrow Road, College Park. So that's not far from Torrens, close into the city there. Anybody sees that? What's the first thing? Well, something that springs to my mind about that property when I see that.
It's got 2 street frontages.
Yeah.
Or 3 actually.
Yeah, see that, you go, oh, development site, well, potential development site. You know, we can look into, what are the parameters there for that. I mean, this is just fictitious, that it's probably a new existed. So we can then go into layers. So it's very much like SA Map Viewer. With our drop-down tabs here, we can input. Oh, let's have parcel boundaries shown, parcel labels. So that's not street numbers, but that's parcel labels. that's different from street numbers in that that relates to the lot reference or the section reference, or possibly in some situations the leasehold reference for that particular property. But that is the first thing that will come up under our legal description of the land. So for this one we've got number 1. It's a very safe bet to say that that one will be known as lot 1 in deposit plan, etc, etc, etc. So we've got our allotment details there. Choose postcodes if you want. 5069. Check street numbers if you wish. Oh, interesting, it hasn't. Yeah, it's not. I've never needed to do that. That's interesting. We've only got several street numbers showing up.
I think it's mostly vacant still.
No, they're not vacant. Oh yes, no, they show up if you zoom in. So that's number 90. That one's number 92, etc. But so we chose parcel number label, but we can also show plan parcel. And there we go. It's allotment 1 in file plan 104150. I mentioned earlier that we have hundreds and sections, etc. So we can select this to tell us which 100 it is in. That's in the 100 of Adelaide. So we are allotment 1, file plan 104150 within the 100 of Adelaide. For local government areas, City of Norwood, Payneham, St Peters. Is it? Ryan, you're sort of looking up and.
Oh no, I'm just looking at what you're doing.
Yes, yeah, okay, yeah, cool. Do I need to make it larger?
Oh no, it's all right. I can see it.
Yep, okay.
My mum's always gone off me for squinting too.
Yeah. Yeah. We can go to development. Example. Let's look at development plan zoning. So that's it's putting a pink overlay over that to show the extent of the zone that property is within. So that's actually a fairly large section of that is part of. Now we'll zoom back in. There we go. And you can also check bushfire protection areas. But our specific zone details. So double click right button, and then we bring up this information on that property that we've checked, that we've sought for within our layers. So development plan, Norwood, Payneham, St Peters, zone RC, which means residential character, and it's policy area 15.4. So Norwood, Payneham, St Peters, within their residential character area, they have at least, well, you know, they have by having a number of 15.4, they have a lot of policy areas within their residential character zones. And I know with this property here, they have different objectives about what they want and what they will allow in this area, as opposed to this area within Harrow Road. So that part of Harrow Road, from my experience, has far more constraints in relation to any development fitting in with the historic character of that road. So what's on there? We're talking pitched roofs, stone frontages, certain setbacks, certain masses and shapes of buildings that fit within that historical aesthetic, whereas down this section of the road, there's far less constraint in that regard. And so that can come down into that's typically defined in our policy area there. So our policy area 15.4. Development category, residential, etc. What other information might we like to have from that? I'll just land parcels. So we know that already. Allotment 1 in this particular file plan, number 90 Perry Road. That's our certificate of title. That's our valuation number. 100 valid, etc. So when we do our property searches, yes, we can search by address, and earlier on within Salus, I said, wait a minute, let's not go searching by address just yet, because another way that we can search, well, I guess we use the address here initially, but this is an autofill thing. So we start typing 90 Harrow, and then it fills the rest of it out for us, and we can grab that, and it makes the job very easy. Within Salus, it doesn't do that, and so it can be easier to find properties through the property location browser than through Salus, and then you get this information, such as valuation number. So grab that, copy, put that into Salus. It will take you directly to that particular property without any confusion. We probably don't want development plan map index, because typically you only go wanting to find that because you're wanting to find out what the zone is. We already have our information here about our residential character, zone, policy area 15.4. Designed wind speed. We might want design wind speeds. There we go. Straight away, so from the South Australian design wind speed map, the map from the former SA Housing Code, which is still adopted and accepted, we've got wind speed N1, so 28 metres per second. Down there, also something we might be interested in, climate zone. So we're in climate zone 5. So that's typical for the Greater Metropolitan area. We're not going to be. Well, we should check this and have a look at it. So energy rating 6 star. So we have to comply with National Construction Code, required to comply with Building Codes of Australia, 6 star energy efficiency requirements, etc. for an elevated building with a lightweight flooring system, etc., etc., etc. I've never checked earthquake hazard zones. So I can't comment on exactly how that relates. But it's something we're not required to search for in our subject. So that's that property. We can make a few notes about it. So we know what paint St. Peter's, and we are residential character zone. Policy area 15.4. So then to find out what that means, how that relates to us, we can go to, here's one I've prepared earlier, our council website for Norwood, Payneham, St. Peter's. Do you guys want to have a go at that on your own computers? Find the council website for Norwood, Payneham and St. Peter's. And also, while we're doing some searching, also bring up Planning SA in another tab as well. So I showed you Planning SA on Monday, didn't I? I'm sure I showed you Planning SA on Monday. We went through that. So for Norwood, Payneham and St Peters, within here we may have a link to Planning SA. I'm not sure. We could go under Development Assessment, and possibly we could find it through navigating our way through here. But another way of finding that out, go straight to where all the information is stored, and go to Planning SA.
You're talking about the portal?
No, but that's taking you straight to the SA planning portal. So that, okay.
I mean, that's just the top one that comes up.
Yeah.
So you want this one rather than
Yeah,
that
sorry, so SA, so for development plans. Planning SA portal is a very new thing.
one? Okay.
So that's only just come, I think it might have only just come online a few days ago.
Okay.
So and I mentioned yesterday how there are major changes happening in this regard.
Yeah.
So and not all those changes are known yet. So there's a new Planning Act which will come in. So Planning Act 2016 which will come into force at some point in time. I don't want to bamboozle you with that, and also I don't know much about it as well. But that new planning portal which has just become available is being brought in with that. So that new development, the new Planning Act of 2016, which will be implemented at some point in the near future.
Here's a new property location browser.
Yeah,
Well, unless
yeah.
it's
So
linked to
there's,
the other one.
that'll be
Yeah, it's
linked
linked
to
to the
exactly
other
the same
one.
property location browser,
Yep, it is.
right? So all these things are interconnected. But what we're interested in from Planning SA are our development plans. So development plans, and this is, so I'm pretty sure, yes, we looked at this on Monday. So our Greater Metropolitan Adelaide development plans. So we know that we are within Norwood, Payneham and St Peters. So let's find the development plan for Norwood, Payneham and St Peters. And up the top there, when you've got Norwood, Payneham and St Peters happening. So Mary, you might be around with the
Yeah, I was
new
just having a
portal
look at
for
it.
Yeah. And
Just wanted to have a look at that.
And exactly that, and have a muck around with all these things. So before taking this subject, I had a chat with Mary, saying, am I taking them through the new stuff, like the new planning portal and whatnot? And the answer to that was no, because we have to work with what is the current system, and any developments that are happening are going to be based upon the current system. So if you understand the current system, it's an easy step to
Takes
the
you
new
back
system.
to that anyway.
Yeah, right. So
So it's just a new user interface.
Yeah, it's just a new
Yeah.
user interface
Yeah.
for now. Yeah. So, but have a muck around with it, have a bit of an explore with it, because that's what's going to be. That's what.
That's our future.
That's our future.
Yeah.
And also, from what I know about our future in that regard, it's about pulling all this stuff into one
Consolidation.
centralised assessment body rather than individual councils. But that's at best mid-year 2020. So it's, and at best, right? So that's a while away. So we get our development plan for Norwood, Payneham and St Peters. And we can have a look at our citywide objectives. Give us an idea of what Norwood, Payneham and St Peters is about. Now it's a fairly broad council area in a sense. They have retail precincts and business precincts, that being the Parade in Norwood, and then smaller retail precincts sort of dotted throughout, associated with the various different supermarkets, etc. They have some very old development, so it encompasses place. Oh, actually, I'm not sure if it encompasses Hackney. I think it does go into includes Hackney. So right next to the parklands, there where you have some of the first buildings built in Adelaide, by settlers, up to new residential subdivisions. What's the one? There's one on the Torrens there that's based around energy efficient principles as well. Lockhill Park. So within this council area, there's a whole spread of stuff. There's even some, a spattering of agricultural. So we've got Gill Estates. Also, we've got those couple of wineries up top of the Gill Road there. What's that?
You're not talking about Penfolds Winery?
Yeah, Penfolds. Yeah.
Going up towards, what's that suburb called?
Skye or Taringi or Woodford.
Trinity Sky, and there's another one. I forgot. They did a really funny house out there. What it's called.
Yeah, I can't think of what it's called.
Yeah, it's right actually behind the Penfolds as it starts to go up.
Stonyfell.
Yeah, that's the one.
Stonyfell.
Yeah, Stonyfell Winery.
Yeah, because there's Stonyfell Winery. So there's even a spattering of agriculture in. So for their council-wide objectives, that might be a fairly wide sort of objectives. But and let's have a quick look. Not that we'll gain too much from it, but what has to be understood is that the way that the planning information is layered is that all development within this particular council area has to adhere to this first and foremost, then it has to adhere to the zone that it sits in, so that residential character zone, and then it has to adhere to the objectives of that particular policy area, so policy area 15.4. So that's our layering of what that of approval, how that dwelling has to, or that structure has to comply. So first of all, it has to comply to this. So there may be some pertinent aspects within this, that will relate directly to our building. So, but we won't spend too long in this lecture reading through that. So orderly economic development that creates a safe, convenient and pleasant environment in which to live. So probably not a quarry. On Harrow Road. Proper distribution of living, working and recreation activities by the allocation of suitable areas of land for those purposes. That doesn't really apply to us unless we're trying to develop on a parkland. Provision of such facilities as are required for accommodation, employment, recreation, health and welfare. Okay, well we fit within that. Accommodation. Great. They allow for employment, recreation, health and welfare. I'll just skim this for a few minutes if you don't mind, to see if I can pull out something that may be of specific relevance to us, and I'd encourage you guys to do that as well and let me know if you spot anything. Something interesting in that very first statement for the council-wide or city-wide objectives, it says future development of the city of Norwood, Payneham and St Peters will in part be influenced by the development of the metropolitan area. Over the past 20 to 30 years, Adelaide metropolitan area has been experiencing growth to the north and south. Growth in this alignment is a product of geographical constraints created by the coast to the west and the South Mount Locke Ranges to the east, which is difficult and expensive to service. The introduction of an urban containment policy means that a large proportion of metropolitan Adelaide's future housing supply will now need to come from urban infill, necessitating an increase in medium and high density living in parts of metropolitan Adelaide. That as an opening statement to their citywide objectives is saying we are open to subdivision and urban infill.
Yeah.
So that's their opening statement. So and then it goes on to say very similar things. So with very few broadacre land holdings remaining within the city, new residential development opportunities are likely to occur, likely to continue to occur as a result of small-scale infill developments at various densities. So small-scale infill developments at various densities, that is subdivision of individual existing
That's what's
allotments.
happening around me. I live in Paynham, and so
Yeah.
I'm in this city council.
Yeah.
And people are they're buying single blocks and they're putting 4 or 5 units in that one block.
Yeah. Yeah.
My brother-in-law lives in Brompton, just behind Clipsal.
Yeah.
And he's got a beautiful old heritage listed sort of house, and either side of it now is apartment buildings, and I'm talking 3 stories high,
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
straight into his backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have friends living there as well.
Yeah, he's not happy about it.
Yeah.
But he said to the developer, "Do you want to buy my block as well?" And the developer said, "Oh, you've done too much work to it."
Right. Yeah.
So he's stuck between
Oh.
these 2 things, can't sell his house. Yeah, he's having a lot of trouble.
Mm.
'Cause they're not even they don't even really look like they're in like the look of the suburb. They're just
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
horrible looking thing.
Big. It was just I thought it was interesting how you've got to communicate with it. Like if you're building it on abutting a council area, you've got to coordinate with council. Which
Yes.
I guess that would make sense.
Yes, that makes.
Um,
Yeah.
And also it strikes me as being that they want these houses to kind of be almost cookie cutter within, it's talking about, because it's talking about going to dense, rational distribution of land use to avoid incompatibility between, so they want everything to kind of match
Yeah.
each other.
And I'll just get to the same page that you're on. So page
on that first
10.
one.
Oh, yes, on that first one, right? Yeah. So we've got there's a rational distribution of land uses to avoid incompatibility between
Yes.
them. So yeah, homogeneity is what
Yeah.
they want things to.
So by those objectives, your chances of buying a block there and building a massive house on it is not, because they want you to like small blocks, lots of high density housing.
Well, that's in their opening statement. That's what they want. It doesn't mean that they won't allow that, because we've got other statements talking about even that one, rational distribution of land uses to avoid incompatibility between them. If we look at that bit of Harrow Road and it is already big houses, single detached houses on large residential allotments, then to meet that criteria, that compatibility of
That's what you
uses,
need.
they're going to say, big house in that allotment, that's fine, that's what everything else is. We have that continuity. So, yes, although they say overall we accept that urban containment needs to happen and that high density development will be the driver, and the mechanism of that is subdivision of smaller allotments of land. That's what it tells us in that first bit. That's not the only thing. So this one says, basically says they're open to that. They, that's what's happening. So,
Even number 11 is quite unusual. Provision of choice of lifestyles within the law and custom of the community. So if you've got a multicultural community, how do you say what the custom of the community is?
yeah, well, and that is an incredibly broad, sweeping statement that can be inclusive of anything that might have to be in there. To say we don't want a bikies headquarters here
Yeah.
with a big sleeper fence out the front and razor wire on the top. That might be their out for not allowing that, because that biking headquarters might meet all the other criteria, but then they can say yes, but it's not providing choice of lifestyle within the law and custom of the community. It's a broad statement to exclude certain.
So that's an exclusion type.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
exclude certain
Maybe
aspects.
religious buildings and stuff.
yeah,
Like,
mosques and things
mass
like that,
mosques
yeah.
and churches.
and it can be used in that regard as well. In that same thing, they can go, and so it's not so much a definition of what they want, but it's one of those statements that gives them an out, saying we can't have that.
It gives them a legal recourse.
Yeah,
Say no,
yes,
you're not
yeah.
doing this.
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But if we go down, so we've got development should form a compact and continuous extension of existing built area located to achieve economy and provision of use of public services. Keep going down. Okay, land use for erection of buildings should be stable. That might be us. Case specific landfill facilities should. Oh no, that's all fine. Native vegetation and significant trees should be preserved. So we understand that is typically what's an important thing for councils. There it is stated. So stormwater should be capable of being drained safely and efficiently from each proposed allotment and disposed of from the land or retained on the land in an environmentally sensitive manner. I'm looking for some more specific prescriptive
Even
statements.
the airport stuff. I mean, this is not even in an airport zone. And
Yeah.
yet there's stuff in there saying that the buildings and structures should not adversely affect by way of height or location the long-term operational safety and commercial aviation requirements of Adelaide Airport and Parafield Airport.
Yeah.
You know, neither
Yeah.
of those are within there.
No, neither of those are within them, but what you do have though are flight paths over certain areas. I can't think of, so North Adelaide, but not North Adelaide is in part of Norwood, Paddington, St Peters. North Adelaide, you've got aeroplanes coming down very low over North Adelaide. I can see some possible restrictions there as a result of that. I can't think of any areas in Norwood, Paddington, St Peters that might affect that. Maybe there's bits in Woodford or Skye or something, but I know it does. It certainly seems a bit of a stretch, but it's not just the location of that airport where a built form can have impacts on that airport. It is, we've got places like North Adelaide where it's miles away from the airport here, but the flight path goes very low over there.
They have a lot of restrictions on building heights in the city because of flight paths.
Flight path,
I don't think the airport was supposed to be there originally in Adelaide. It was supposed to be built in Parafield.
Maybe, yeah, because
Where,
it's kind of funny because the flight path, basically, even if they come in across Norwood area, the city's in the way, so they've got the big buildings
And
and the
you
city's
think
in the
about
way.
it, there's not many cities that have an airport in
That
the
close to
centre
the
of
city, yeah.
But and then some of these things may be just a bit of not cut and paste, but adoption from other council things as well.
possibly.
And let's include this as a statement to cover us.
So do
for-
the councils work together as well? Or is say the Ingle Farm Council and Karaka Council are completely different things that don't really have much to do with each other? Is there a general goal for the whole of that they're working to?
I think there is a general goal that they are working to. I don't know the ins and outs of that because I've never worked in planning
have to work together.
within council.
Yeah,
But
that's
They have to in
They
some
have
ways
to.
because let's look at Payneham for instance. There's really not a lot of industrial infrastructure out that way, so they'd have to work with the council so that they can kind of push people that way
Yeah.
in some ways,
Yeah.
So because there'd be businesses that want to open up that area, but they're like, no, you need to go somewhere
we
else.
move out to Wingfield or-
Yeah, and that's all part of working within the statewide
State one, yeah.
objectives as well. But I was also thinking the councils, another motivation for councils to work together, because the councils that we have currently are the amalgamation of many councils. I don't know if you guys think back far enough when there were all these separate councils, like a council of Birdwood and one of local or whatever, and then they all got pulled together. Adelaide Hills
Yeah.
Council,
Yeah.
Onkaparinga's another one. All council all these different councils pulled together create Onkaparinga. Those amalgamations are going to happen much easier if those councils
Work
have
together.
have cooperation and continuity within what they want. And I don't know what the future holds, but that's kind of the direction.
Yep.
But here we're getting down into some more of our council-wide objectives, and it's started to get more specific. So down onto page 14, design of land division should incorporate safe convenient access from each allotment to an existing or proposed public road or thoroughfare. At that property there, that may impact on us with our 2-lane frontages and 1 street frontage. Face abutting streets and open spaces, incorporate suitable land for usable public open space. What else we got? Not overshadow, dominate, encroach, or otherwise detrimentally affect the setting of the surrounding locality, and where appropriate, amalgamate smaller allotments to ensure coordinated and efficient site development. So that not overshadow, dominate, encroach, or otherwise detrimentally affect the setting of the surrounding locality. That, that's sort of pertinent to what we're talking about in was it Bowden or Brompton? Brompton.
Sorry, just behind.
Chief Street.
Chief Street, just behind the old Clipsal.
Yeah. And then also under 24C, provision for efficient solar access. Trying to find some more development specific ones. But as a main, these council-wide objectives are those statements which planners can rely upon to refuse something. So they're not always so prescriptive on the actual property, but often. So we've got buildings should be designed to minimise their visual bulk and provide visual interest through design elements such as articulation, colour, detail, materials, etc. So that's so somebody wanted to produce a very flat-fronted, black, monolithic dwelling with no windows at the front and no visible access to it. That gives the council that option to say no. Doesn't have any articulation, etc. Window and door proportions, so on. On page 18, building on selected sites, it says what you can, what you cannot do. Building setbacks from road boundaries, so we don't have anything prescriptive there, but otherwise you've got to abide by the certain policy area. Height of any retaining wall should not exceed 1 metre. Where practicable, the area immediately adjacent to the retaining wall should incorporate landscaping to soften its appearance. The combined height of a fence and retaining wall should not exceed 2.4 metres, measured from the lower of the 2 adjoining natural ground levels. So anything beyond that is non-compliant development, and you have to go through that process. Okay. So that's our council-wide objectives. We won't labour on that too much, but there are there are some we should definitely start. So our layering of planning starts with that as our overall, and then we go to our character zone. So residential character zone. So that's it there. So this is our next tier of planning document. So then within here we have to comply with all the council-wide objectives that then follow what's prescribed in here. So, and we'll quickly look through for any. So has everybody found residential character zone? So forming character development should not be undertaken unless it is consistent with the zone. Yes. gives us, so where two-story development is proposed, so they're saying they don't really want two-story development and they prefer that roof spaces are used for second stories. If however two-story development are proposed, height and length of upper-story wall should not be minimised, diminished, and articulated in such a way so that they are visually recessive. So not pushed back. We've got non-compliant development, so on page 109, under here we've got our non-compliant development. So following forms of development are considered inappropriate and non-complying. Advertisement and or advertising hoarding that moves, rotates, etc. as any part above the top of the walls or fascia comprises bunting, strings, flags, wing veins. Consulting rooms non-compliant except here a crematorium is non-complying. Entertainment value, entertainment venue, farming, fuel depot, horse keeping, horticultural, hospital, hotel, indoor industry, etc. So that's within our residential character zone. Obviously, there is significant educational institutions within Northern Payneham, St Peters. They would have their own zone, as do the hotels, motels, fuel depots, etc. So that's the non-compliant within the residential. And then we have our various different policy areas. So we've got ours, our policy area 15.4. I might just have to back to our property location browser and get a little bit more information on that residential character. Yeah, how that exactly. So what we don't have, so we've got a policy 15.4 happening there. What I don't see is anything in the planning document that relates to that number. So we've got all our policy areas, Trinity Garden, St Maurice policy area. So I have a quick flick through, see what will relate. See if I can determine from this quickly what relates to us. So for those at home, we are within the College Park policy area, residential character zone, and then we're within the College Park policy area. So these are our specific requirements for that. So have a quick look.
It's funny how they go on about high density, then it says the College Park policy area will remain one of the lowest density residential areas in the city.
Yes, so that's in their council-wide objectives. So at Payneham, they're going, yeah, sure, carve your blocks up, 10 metre minimum frontage, etc., etc., etc. College Park, we have allotments of 2,000 square metres with very grand buildings on them and lovely big plane trees going down the road. Let's not let any of that happen in here. So that's why they have specific policy areas. So they have the council-wide objectives saying, yes, we're all for development, but not in this bit. This bit is staying the way that is. And so within our policy area of College Park, that is the overriding, that is the one that dictates exactly what we can do. So we can look at the council-wide objective and say, oh yeah, that's right. And then the residential will go, yes, what we're thinking about fits. And then in our policy area, if it says that doesn't fit, then it doesn't fit. But in here we might have nothing there might be nothing in here that relates to balconies or overshadowing or something like that. And so so we'll get no information about that. That might be included in the residential section, or it might be included in the council-wide objectives. So when it comes to retaining walls, balconies, all these sorts of things, that's all mentioned in the council-wide. Residential, it's, that tier is talking about, okay, well, it has to be residential, can't be car wash, can't be these sort of things, etc., all that. And then in here, these are our more specific prescriptive ones. And so, so this policy area is characterised by a consistent pattern of prestigious single-storey detached dwellings on very large, spacious allotments fronting wide, tree-lined streets. Dwellings have sizable setback distance from all boundaries and are typically set in impressive landscape grounds with front boundary defined by fencing in various different styles. So that's what they want to.
Yeah, even the blocks are supposed to be 900 square metres minimum.
Yeah. So we've got 900 square metres minimum. So we can't. Yeah. Even though we've got those 2 lane frontages, can't use it. That block, I have to know, is 1,000 square metres. So can't be
subdividing.
Can't be subdivided. And they're the site for development. So that's it. That's our exercise in going through the planning document. We have another 34 minutes or so before we finish up this class. I'm going to make sure we cover all the other things that you'll have to be looking at for this task. So we've got the use of property location browser. Everybody's pretty happy with that. Locating appropriate council website. So that's fine. We've been able to locate a council website. Locating and completing planning approval application forms. So within Northern Payne and St. Peter's, fairly well laid out homepage where we go planning and development, and I haven't actually looked at this one recently, so we'll just go development assessment. So I might be muddling my way through it a little bit as well. Got some information here about what is development, pre-application advice. That might be good stuff to read. Lodge the development application. Let's have a look at that. So on this page, types of consents, information requirements, fees. That might be an important thing for you to know. How to lodge a development application. Application assessment times. That might be a very important thing for you to know. And application assessment process. And then over on the right here, we've got forms and documents. So a development plan. So that's our link back to planning SA. Development application form. Fantastic. So we click on that.
That's the Planning SA portal, yeah? SA Planning.
Oh yes, sorry. Yeah. No, I've gone to the Norwood Payne and St. Peter's Council website. So did I do that? I did that a bit quick.
On us.
Yeah. So we had that open already. I just switched tabs. So we went over to Norwood Payne and St. Peter's Council. Had a look in planning and development. Oh yeah, so all right, that's it. Not within Planning SA, but go to the actual council website. So yeah, Norwood Payne and St. Peter's Council website. Type that into the Google search, and that will be the. Yeah, there we go.
So if you want to get those applications, you go to each particular suburbs council. And
Exactly. Yeah, to get those application
forms differ from council to council.
They do. Yes. Okay. Yeah. And they are specific. Yeah. And for that, sometimes it can be handy. No, I've never used it, but this is my thoughts. It can be handy to get some of these forms from other councils as well to see what's possible in certain areas. That's cropped up for me in thinking about owner building stuff without being a registered site supervisor. there are some councils within their stuff, they say you have to specify a site supervisor and builder for your project, full stop. Then there are other council areas that say, no, there is this avenue whereby you can submit as long as all of the work's individually done, as being done by certified tradespeople, you can submit the certification from each one. And they have that process for being able to do that. Now, what I haven't tested is whether that process is transferable from one council to another, to approach your council and say, well, look, this council has this set up. That's the way they do it. Can I do this development within your council area following their thing? I think it's worth trying.
Yeah.
I've never tried it yet, but that's,
You never know if you never go there.
No, exactly. And if one council can do it, and they have that avenue, and that's all laid out and already organised, yeah, possibly the other council will go, okay, well, if you can give us those stages and provide us everything in that stage, yes, we'll do that for you.
I just had to have a builder that was willing to certify my work.
Yes, and that is the easiest thing. If you're lucky, you'll find a builder who will do that, and they won't charge you very much for it. But because all that's very much tightening up, builders go, yeah, I'll do it for you. Well, no, actually, no, not many builders will say they'll do it. Some will say they'll do it for you, but it will cost you, and you have to pay for that, because they say, I have to inspect everything as it happens. All these time, I have to keep going out there all the time. That's going to cost a lot of money, and charge you for it. So, but
Unless they're in the family and then they just...
Yeah, well, builders charge you for everything.
yeah.
For everything.
I've got a brother-in-law who's a builder, so he just certified everything. He'd come every now and then, check it all over and certify it.
Yeah, it's because it's a protected industry.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, without the last half hour here. So we're going to Norwood, Paine and St Peter's Council. Everybody's done that.
Yep.
Yeah. Planning and development. Development assessment. Lodge development application. And then down here we've got our development application form. But then there's a whole bunch of things on here which are also very handy for you to know. Types of consents, information requirements, fees, how to lodge development application, assessment times, application assessment process. So that's our form there. You can open that form up, open, allow. There we go, there's our development application form. So, yeah. All these things differ between councils. So it looks like Norwood, Paine and St Peter's Council, you have to print that off and write on it. So that's, not as modern as some. Some have the ability to just click on here and fill it all out on the computer, editable PDFs. No, but that's their development application form, and their power line clearance form sits separately. So some councils have the power line clearance form as part of their development application form. Makes sense because they're typically they both have to be completed and submitted together. So back.
So what is the power line form?
So that's a power line declaration form to say that you are not building your house in contravention of SA Power Network's requirements.
Okay.
So say I'm not building my roof, close to this power line.
Yep.
Yeah,
You
etc.
can get to the development plan through there as well.
What's that?
You can actually get to the development plan.
Yes, you can. Yeah, so there's that link there as well. So I mentioned earlier that we'll probably find that link somewhere in the council website, and there it is. But so you need to do the power line clearance declaration form. Yeah, so and you fill in the particulars, being the applicant or person acting on behalf of the applicant, the development described above declare that the proposed development will not involve the construction of a building which would, if constructed in accordance with the plan submitted, not be contrary to the regulations described for purposes of Section 86 of the Electricity Act of 1996. I make this declaration under Clause 2A of Schedule 5 of the Development Regulations 2008. And then it goes on to say the particulars that relate to that Section 86. So, and where it's applicable. So this declaration is only relevant to those development applications seeking authorisation for a form of development that involves the construction of a building, other than where the development is limited to an operation rules, etc. So, requirements of the Electricity Act of 1996 do not apply in relation to aerial, line, or a fence, etc. Particular care needs to be taken where high voltage power lines exist or where the development is on a major road, commercial, industrial in nature, or built on the property boundary. An information brochure of building safety near power lines has been prepared by the technical regulator to assist applicants in other interested persons. This brochure is available here. Let's grab that and open that up. So that takes us to building safety near power lines, identifying power lines. So going to here. So actually, I think I jumped ahead for a lot of people, didn't I? So I was going to say I encourage you to go into here and have a look at these things. So before you begin to build your power lines, will be an important thing to have a look at. Type of power lines near the construction site, aerial, underground, high, low voltage, etc. And then safe clearance distances. And so some of this information is going to have to happen, or it's going to have to be provided from the Office of the Technical Regulator. I can't look at a power line and go, oh, that's a 132 kV as opposed to a 66 kV. I could have a guess, but good to. But so these are our clearance distances. Insulated bare, insulated with earth screen, etc. So you've done that, yeah. Yeah. So everybody's found that. Yep. Great. So it may be that you'll need to find that a little later on. And back to our council website. So locating and completing the power line notification form and the information we'll need for doing that. Establish drawings, documentation required to be submitted to council. So that may be how to lodge a development application. No, that's not. Information required. So, development application form, certificate of title. So typically when you do this development application, you've got to have gone onto sess3 and purchased the certificate of title. So we all saw where we do that earlier on. You don't have to do that for today's exercise. Power lines clearance declaration form, demolition proposal form, regulated tree removal proposal form. Well, I was hoping they would have something specifically here about plans required. They don't. So let's have a look at this fact sheet. Now, the our development site, 174 Shepherds Hill Road, Bellevue Heights, is not going to be within Norwood Payne and St Peters. So you're going to be looking at a different council website. For that, things will be laid out in a different way, accessed in a different fashion. So what we're doing here in Norwood Payne and St Peters is an idea about how to find stuff, but beware that it will be different for your council area. But here, they've got a fantastic, I think that's a good diagrammatic representation of what is required for what sort of development. So single story dwelling or addition sounds very much like us. Okay, application form, certificate of title, application fee, site plan, floor plan, elevations. We don't need streetscape plan or locality plan. We do need stormwater drainage plan. We need site works plan and landscape plan and power line clearance declaration plan. That's what we'll need to provide them. So that's very, very clearly and easily laid out for us there. For all the panels that is. So locate. We've got. Is there any further additional supporting documentation specific for this design, solar panel application, etc.? What I would be looking for that is some fact sheets. So back to the planning. Fact sheets, there we go. Fantastic. What is urban regional planning? We know about that now. Do I need approval? Well, that's probably a really good fact sheet to read. Can I apply for non-compliant development? That's a good fact sheet to read. How are development applications assessed? That's a good one to read. How long would my DA take to process? It's a good one to read. So that, but we open, do I need approval? Have a quick look at that. And what I'm looking for in here, what I was hoping to find in here was a statement saying you don't need to have development approval for solar system under 100 kilograms, which is the typical statement. Now, this is, I didn't prepare this lecture around Norwood Payne and St Peters. It's just gone in here. Some councils will say that within their thing about, do I need approval? I'll say you won't need approval for a solar panel system within a certain size, like less than 100 kilograms. They haven't set it out so clearly and easily as some other councils. So we may have to do a bit more digging within the council website for that. But no, we won't. We've got 15 minutes left before lunch. Okay, locate sequence of submission process. We've done that. And locate council time frame for approval. So that'll be within our fact sheet here. How long will my DA take to process? There. And locate council costs involved with planning approval process. I think we saw fees earlier, didn't we? Assessment. thing where we saw things earlier. But this is where we're going to have to be doing a lot of our searching. One final thing which I want to show you before we finish the class now, and it may take me a little while to find out. I'll just pause the recording. Within our property location browser, notice you can click on the info button to bring up this side bit, not do the double. So you don't have to do the double right click. You can also bring it up with this info button. Under here, so we've got our land parcel, so that's our parcel information. We can click on this bit here. It says print report, print to PDF. We can print that, and then that PDF will pop up at some point in time. Okay. Also, for those watching at home, we've worked out how to print the parcel report as well, which is a very handy thing to do. So we've highlighted info, and we go down to print report, select PDF, and the important thing was to fit parcel to page. We go print. Take a little while. Allow, and there we'll have our PDF showing our chosen allotment and with our chosen information underneath. So street address, etc. 100 valuation number, title reference, plan parcel, and we can go and do that for other aspects as well if we wish. So development plan, zoning. Show those, and through our layers, or through our layers, incorporate that once again in our report. So thank you, and that's session 1 on planning. So session 2 this afternoon is completing the exercise. So for those of you at home, we go to in Learn, and then under Project 1 Planning, Project 1 Planning, Task 1 Requirements, and we complete that.